Well, as I guess rightly so, over the last number of months, we've been paying an awful lot of attention to what's been going on down along the southern eastern slopes of Alberta, the Old Man watershed area. But there are other watersheds in our province, and I thought it would be an idea to reach out and see what's happening in some of the other ones. And today we're going to be talking about the Mighty Peace Watershed area, and a real pleasure to introduce Adam Norris, who is the coordinator for the watershed. Adam, thanks so much for taking some time.
Thanks for having me. And just, to get going, I'd like to say we like the North more than the South. So we're happy that you're talking to us.
Well, it is absolutely gorgeous country up there. And I guess let's start off with that sort of that opening comment. Are you guys watching what is taking place down there and sort of at the 10,000 foot level? What are your feelings?
So I imagine you're talking mostly about the coal issue that's going on. And that does impact the Peace Watershed. So people might be surprised, but the Peace Watershed actually starts in Jasper National Park. The backside of those mountains start to flow north. They go near Grand Cache into Smoky River and then into the Peace. So there is a lot of that Zone 2 area in our watershed. We have a coal mine that is active on and off near Grand Cache. And so those coal policies do affect what is going on in our watershed, in our headwaters.
So in terms of other issues that are having an impact, of course, it was announced not too long ago. It looks like that big dam project along the Peace is on the BC side is moving forward. What kinds of concerns or issues that could come from that have you folks a little bit concerned?
Yeah, so our organization has done an integrated watershed management plan, and the board and the watershed residents identified for us 4 main issues of concern, and one of them is Peace River flow regime. So we've been looking at this for a long time, pre-Site C as well, and the concern with Site C at this point would be the impacts of construction. It's already a regulated river, so the hydrograph, the timing of how much water goes down that river is already been impacted by the Peace Horizon and the WAC Bennett Dam. So that's not changing a lot of those downstream effects. What is new is all this impacts of construction, as you can imagine, sediment in water, moving water, rerouting. And there are concerns around that. As with any anthropogenic activity that takes place on a landscape, it impacts our water. So
you mentioned that the watershed, I guess your southern border is Jasper. Where's the northern border?
So, yeah, it's sort of a construct. If we were a true watershed group, we would go complete headwaters, which would include BC, but we don't. We're an Alberta group. And of course, the outflow would be into the Slave River. So the actual Peace River ends just north of Delta near Fort Fitzgerald or Fort Chipewyan. And we, however, are also looking at the Slave River in Alberta. So not Lesser Slave, like the Big Lake, but up north going into the Northwest Territories. So it spans Jasper to the Northwest Territories border.
Yeah, give us a sense of what it's like to work and live up in that area and have access to probably some of the most remote areas in Alberta and access to some of these amazing rivers and streams.
Yeah, there's some really cool things up here. We have the 11th widest waterfall in the world. People don't know about the Vermilion Chutes, but it's up there. So it's as you mentioned, remote. It's hard to get to. Not a lot of people have been there, but it is quite a thing. We have the Peace Athabasca Delta, this amazing complex of wetlands that the First Nations people up here have been using for traditional mode of life for millennia, right? So there's those pieces, but then we also have some really interesting farming communities. So Fort Vermilion is one of the oldest and the most northern agricultural communities in the world. Not the oldest, but most northern in the world. And then you come down towards Grand Prairie. It's a big center again. So we like to, sort of make jabs about the southern part of the province, but I think we have a lot of commonalities. We have some parts that are a little more remote. What is unique is that sort of peatland complex in the boreal forest. But otherwise, when you get around that Grand Prairie area, it's an agricultural area with a lot of industry, forestry, a lot of people, agriculture, and oil and gas, of course. Yeah.
Now, over the last little while, you folks have been doing some fairly comprehensive restoration work, and I guess, to be honest, when I saw that, I was a little bit surprised. And again, you think of this vast area and low population, and yes, certainly some industry, but restoration work, really? So fill us in, Adam.
Yeah, so there's really two things, and we have to often divide in our watershed. As you mentioned, we have a lot of green zone or government land where industry, so it'd be forestry and oil and gas, are really the big players. And then there's some white zone, some private land, and we'd see more agricultural and agriculture influences, similar to southern Alberta, say. And that the impact on that green zone is often extensive, right? They log over a large area, and there's some restoration work to be done there in terms of seismic lines, for instance, or old forestry roads that weren't put to bed. But a lot of our restoration works with landowners. So, and it's part of the thing. As people are on the landscape, we change how water flows, and water is really, really powerful. And it doesn't give up easily, right? It just continues to do its thing. So it's relentless. And once we've started to change things, we have issues like erosion. And so we've been involved there. And a lot of this work tends to target a fish habitat situation. There are obviously many other uses besides fish, but that's often a proxy for we've restored the water quality and aquatic habitat if we can get back to a aquatic habitat that can support fish, then we know we've achieved that.
So in this particular case, some of the restoration work is benefiting what species of fish? Arctic grayling, would that be a big one?
That is in some parts of it. Yeah, we have. So in the Wapiti, there's a pretty solid population. And some of them the southern tributaries, Narroway River, there's some there, Little Smoky. In some of the more agriculture areas, there's not grayling there anymore. And that's where they've been extirpated, essentially, right? And we are doing work there, hoping that the habitat is good enough that grayling would come back as part of a natural fish assemblage. So we're also concerned about pike and walleye and suckers, because without the whole complement, you can't have a functioning fish community. But one of the projects we just did, we had a sucker spawning run. We think long nose, not completely sure, could have been white. But the first one in 3 generations of memory for that landowner there. So, they'd been on that land for 3 generations, never seen a spawning run. And after this restoration project, there was that. And that's critical, right? I mean, that's part of this whole ecosystem. We can't just pick and choose little pieces. We have to look at the whole overall picture. So yeah.
That's really quite cool. I mean, it's not often you hear of a restoration program that goes to benefit sucker populations. It's just I guess we tend to kind of go towards and I'm guilty. I right away I jumped to grayling, well, that's an important fish. So it's kind of neat to see that even the fish maybe further down the pecking order in terms of the general angling population gets that kind of love.
Yeah, and like you said, myself and an angler, and I love to go catch sport fish. But if we don't have a sucker population, that's part of the feed fish for some of these, right? And it's part of that dynamic community. So although this project I'm referring to, the stream bank stabilization extension, we weren't targeting sucker habitat. By restoring a stream, it happened, right? If we can create those conditions, then fish can move back in. So a lot of our restoration looks at trying to create these conditions where we've restored watershed function so that, like you said, the range of fish can come back and we as a society can enjoy them. So
in terms of looking into your crystal ball, Adam, do you have some other projects that are coming up? I mean, obviously COVID has created havoc for all of us, but once we're out of that, are there some big water related programs that you guys want to launch?
Yeah, there's a couple we've got applications in. I probably won't reveal too much. Some of it's tied to partners and that sort of thing, but I'll give you the general overview. One is in the Smoky headwaters. And what we find really interesting there is the ability for a refuge. So we know climate change is happening. We have warmer temperatures that can affect dissolved oxygen for fish. We want to look at doing a sort of a trial comparison and improving fish habitat for cold water species in this headwaters area, the Smoky. And that would be a bit of a refuge. As things warm up, there's going to be less and less area for these fish that they can thrive in. And we want to make sure that these are in top condition. The other piece would be working with some municipalities and some landowners to understand the long-term costs of water management. As you know, the last couple of years up here, you've probably seen lots of comments about the flooding. We've had a lot of flooding, and our current approach to water management is causing us problems. So we want to look at how can we identify the costs of the way we manage water, and is there a better way to do that?
Well, we certainly wish you all the best in terms of upcoming projects and the projects that you've introduced us to. I think that's pretty cool. Adam, thanks so much, and we look forward to chatting with you again real soon.
Okay, thanks so much, Michael. Enjoy your show.